correct term for what's happening out here for me on stage this afternoon. So this is your opportunity. I'm going to welcome out our producers in a moment for you to ask them anything you like that you think it might help you as a producer, you as a comedian, you in the industry. And we also have people watching and listening from all over the country. And they're going to have the opportunity as well to ask questions. So if you see me checking my phone or my watch during this show, I'm not bored. I'm taking questions from around the state, so around the country rather. So I'm going to step out of the way and bring everybody up. In no particular order, from Based Comedy, please welcome Josh Armstrong. From the Sit Down Comedy Club, it's Fedele Crisci. From the Brisbane Comedy Festival and the Brisbane Powerhouse, Phoebe Meredith. And from Good Chat Comedy Club, Jake Smith. Very well done not making your applause any louder for any particular producer. That would have been a rookie mistake.
We would have noticed that.
Take a note.
Noted. All right, so I'm going to ask them a couple of questions up to and including who are you, to get everything warmed up, and then you'll have the opportunity. So can I ask, I'm going to start with you, Jake, because you are physically closest to me.
Thank you so much.
Can I ask, what is the Jake Smith story? How did you come to be a producer, and what do you do at Good Chat?
So I've been doing comedy for 4 years and running Good Chat for about the same amount of time. I started with two others, Nat and Kale. Originally started monthly shows, and then about 2 years ago we switched up to Fritzenberger up the road, and I look after the booking of everything. I'm jack of all trades, everything at the moment, so yeah. All
right. Josh, same question for you.
I worked in radio when I was a lot younger, and then events after that in Toronto, and then came to Gold Coast, or went to Gold Coast, did open mics. Someone stopped running open mics, I took it over, and I got a message months and months and months after that had wrapped up, and someone said, "Can you do comedy at our venue?" And I said, "Sure, but only for this much money." And they said yes, and then I got stuck here. That's pretty much it.
That's beautiful. And same question for you, Phoebe.
I started in independent kind of cabaret producing whilst working full-time to kind of pay the bills. I started a production company and did independent producing, and then moved up to Brisbane 4 years ago and landed in the comedy festival world.
Fedele?
My story's similar to everyone else's. Just happened upon it, being in the right place at the right time, and just taking opportunities as they arose. We originally started at Dockside, doing one night a week, to doing what we do now, and came from a theatre background with Labotte Theatre originally, doing improvisation, but never done stand-up, only ever done improv. Yeah.
Didn't you do stand-up one time as like a special treat?
No.
I've heard stories about this.
I think I told a joke once.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I heard
that
like a really
long time.
I heard that you guys forced him to do a 5-minute set at one of the anniversaries one time.
No.
Okay.
Not at an anniversary. Only ever gotten drunk at anniversaries.
Oh.
And it will be our 30th anniversary next year. Yeah, scary.
All right. So I'm going to ask a question. Whoever can, I'll just pitch it to all of you. First question. What would be one bit of advice that you would give to a budding producer? What's something you wish someone had said to you when you first started out?
Man, get a trade. Just
don't do it. It's horrible. It's really a nightmare.
I would say know how to write a budget and stick to it.
Yeah, for sure.
Would be my big. And measured risk would be another one. Don't be scared to take a risk and back yourself in that risk. But if it doesn't turn out, make sure you learn a lesson from it, so you don't make the same mistake again.
My term is that money you lose on that show is your membership fee into the Producers Club. Everyone needs to lose money to understand how much value it has. We've all made mistakes, and you definitely learn from those. Don't make the same mistake twice.
And also, I think if you're producing a show, I mean, producing your own show is one thing, but if you're thinking of starting a room and getting into that sort of space, like, what are your intentions? If it's just for more stage time, That's probably not the best way to go about doing things, and don't undervalue the art to the venues or the people who are running the venues or anything like that, because they don't know what comedy is, what it's worth, how hard the people work. So if you're going in there and saying, yeah, we can run a show for $50 or some drinks over the bar, and they're not contributing anything at all, it's sort of detrimental to the whole thing.
It really devalues our industry by doing that sort of stuff. I was talking to a young producer last week and just saying, you have to take into consideration everyone. If you're doing all the jobs yourself, you have to think of, okay, if I need someone to do the sound, how much will that cost me? If there's someone looking after the door, how much will that cost me? Being the producer and looking after the show, how much is that worth? And you need to value all those things, because at some stage you won't be able to do all those jobs. And you're going to have to pay someone to do it, and pay them properly.
And if producing's the game that you want to get into, then you need to have the cash flow there to expand, and you certainly need to be able to pay artists properly as well.
Yeah, actually more to that. I see so many gigs that, they might have a, great first gig and then, maybe low sales, and then all of a sudden the room runner is also emceeing, or, they're kind of cutting corners, whereas you want to be able to go, right, at least have a base or have some capital to be able to take some hits initially, because you want to be able to provide a quality product all the way through that initial period to kind of build it. Do you know what I mean? I've had some low weeks where I've gone, I could just MC it, but I'm not a good MC.
I didn't know you knew that.
Oh, I'm awful at it. But that's, I'd love to save the cash some weeks, but you go, no, you have to provide a quality product to get something like... Sorry, I'm trying to win points.
Sometimes you have to double down. It's that thing of, American business thing is, we've got to cut 10 or 15% from a business to make it survive. Whereas in other, Emirates is a really good example. When they were told to cut 30%, they doubled down and put marble toilets into their airplanes. They went, no, we're going to spend more, and that's what people started talking about, and they started getting more passengers.
That sounds heavy for toilets.
Yeah, I know. It is a plane, but it's very thin marble.
Okay, right, like a veneer.
Yeah.
Does anyone have a question that they'd like to ask? Who's got the mic? Bridge?
Yeah.
Linda does.
Oh.
Was there a question over
Bridget's scared of people.
here? No, just Linda's scarier.
Thank you, Mick Wells. How do you decide who you pay and how you pick your artists? Because I've been kicking around for 5 or 6 years now, and I know most of the people in this room, or their faces and yourselves. How do you, and I have a trade, which is good, but how do you pick who you're going to put on your shows and how much you're going to pay them? How do you decide a comedian's worth when they're in your show? Like, how do you decide you're going to pay someone, but everyone else has to turn up for free? At what point do you say, hey...
No one turns up for free. Pay everybody. Would be my
I'm talking open mic nights and people producing and stuff.
I don't know. I think everyone open mic... look, it's artists, even open micers practice. They spend time writing their material. If that's worth $50, that's worth $50. If they bring 10 people into your venue and spend $50 over the bar, then you've made your money back. I just think it's really important to invest in your own art. If you want more and more people to invest in your community, you have to pay them. That's my attitude anyway. I find it's a budget question. If I've written a show budget, I know what I can pay artists, marketing, all the extra bits in putting a show together. And then I kind of lowball a fee, and then if someone says yes or no, then I just go up and down based on that. But you've got a budget, you can stick to it. If you can't get artists for that, then you've got to be able to wiggle in that budget.
I think from a sort of I guess I could probably speak to the more weekly sort of shows that we run without a venue where we're working with external venues and external hirers, and we have flat rates because obviously we do have open spots, three or four of them for each show. So I mean the way we book those is very simple. That's mostly I'd say 90% a voucher system, and then there's 10% that we know who they are and they want to jump up for whatever reason, or people have sent us video or audio, or there's something tangible that we can sort of see. It's obviously a pretty tight-knit community, so we sort of know where people are going to fit in to lineups. When I started running shows, I think every other open mic that I'd been to had been doing 5-minute spots. I knew it was such a pain to get down to the Gold Coast, so I wanted to halve the number of acts that we had and just have 10-minute spots, because if we weren't able to pay people to come down, and I mean, I agree with what you said, Phoebe, but I think for an open mic, there's no good way. You can't sit at home and do comedy like you would noodle on a guitar and get good. You do have to have an audience. So we wanted to be able to provide something where, or provide shows where we had longer set times, so people could flesh out their ideas. We could keep the quality of the show consistent, so we would have return audiences, and that was sort of the model for doing that. And then when it comes to paying, and those other shows that we have, like Home of the Arts and those monthly shows, Comedy Underground, whatever else we've got going on, we try and find people who we think. I've broken it down like I feel like there are three things that you need, and you need to have two of them, and you can sort of falter on one, and it's being easy to work with, being consistent, and being funny. Now the funny one is critical. Like that one, to a point, you definitely need to kind of get over a bar. But if you're incredibly fucking funny, and relatively dependable, but not very consistent, I'd say like a good example of that you may know would be like 2015 Dan Rath. Like him, we would put him up to headline, even though I knew it was a 50-50 that he would do well, because his funniness sort of outweighed everything else. But if you're still working through it and you haven't quite found your voice or your rhythm yet, but you're incredibly dependable and consistent and easy to work with, like that's great. That's more than enough for at least for us. I think that's sort of how we judge what we think people can do or are capable of.
With us, when we started 30 years ago, there was about 5 comics in Brisbane, and we very quickly discovered that we need to produce comedians, and that's why we started open mic rooms. And we started bringing people from Sydney and Melbourne on a weekly basis. And then we discovered we needed to actually have more shows, so we made it economically viable to bring people up. And by bringing people up, it educated the people that we had in Brisbane to 2 very different styles. Melbourne comedy and Brisbane comedy in the early 90s and late 80s was very, very different. One was more cabaret based and one was more rock and roll based. Sydney was very much rock and roll. You got to get the jokes out, do all that sort of stuff. And Melbourne came from university reviews and stuff like that. It was a lot more storytelling. What we've found is we've always needed open mic rooms. As Josh said, you got to get up and you got to fail. It's the equivalent of being a band and practicing in your garage, and you're doing it 5 minutes at a time. Unlike a band who can practice for 3 or 4 hours at a time, comics are getting up for 5 minutes. If you've done 100 gigs for 5 minutes, you've done 500 minutes. It's less than 12 hours. You know what I mean? So it takes a lot more time. Once you start getting some semblance of funny, we start trying to push people through. That's why we've done Sunday sessions in the past, and I've reintroduced that to sort of take people from doing 5-minute spots and going, oh, this person's doing well, let's throw them into a 10-minute spot and see how they go with that. And just keep building them slowly and building them to paid spots. You know, the thing is, we want people to get paid. We want people to get better. Some people will always be open micers because they don't learn the lessons. I'm not trying to be hard on anyone, but there are a lot of things that you need to learn as a stand-up. And if you're not learning those lessons and not improving, you're gonna be pushed to the side, and other people will come through. And the thing is, we're not. Me as a showrunner and producer, when I give someone feedback, it's to help them out to improve. Because that's the best thing for me. I want people to be famous, because then I can have them in my room and sell more tickets. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Can I ask, sorry, it was Mick, was it? So are you asking more about the actual money side and how much people get paid? Because it sounded like you're... Sure. So what, how... Sure.
Oh, so how much you... I work on the basis of, for myself, I go, if you're doing, depending on the gig, and I'm consistent across the board, if you're doing a paddo gig and you're doing a 10-minute spot, you get $50. If you're doing a 20-minute spot, you get $100. If you're doing a 30-minute spot, it jumps to $200. And if you're doing a headliner, which is 40 minutes plus, you're getting at least $300. And that will vary. They're the base rates. If you're hosting a show, minimum $200. If you're doing a travelling show, like at one of the suburban places, you're getting at least $250. And if you're doing the feature spots in those ones, you should be getting at least $400 for those sort of gigs. These are the rates that I pay for, like if we're doing Caboolture Sports Club or North Lakes or other rooms. So when we do those open mic shows like the Thursday night live shows, the MC gets paid, and then there's a paid 10 and a paid 20, and then the rest are people doing 5-minute spots. And then it's how much you budget out for that show.
What advice would you give when you get approached by a business or something that wants you to do like a gig for them? It's like a private gig. How do you go about negotiating your fee?
Well, there's sort of a minimum corporate rate that most comedians sort of adhere to, but it gets difficult, I think, at those at lower tiers, I suppose.
Yeah, well, it's if you are someone like the amount of people, we get a lot of phone calls for corporate gigs, and sometimes people will ask for someone, and I ask a series of questions about that corporate gig, and I will say that person won't be right for your gig, or if they will be right. Because if you've got a bunch of labourers and stuff like that, and it's like a smoko sort of gig and blah, 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 there are certain comics that will work that really well, and there are certain comics that will struggle with that. And it's about putting the right person into the right situation. If you get approached by a company and you turn around and go, oh yeah, I'm going to charge $1,500, and you're a 5-minute act, you shouldn't be doing it. Because the reality is you're undervaluing the industry by doing that sort of stuff. There are a lot of people that go around saying that they're comics and stand-ups, but they're actually open micers. They're not professional. If it's not your full-time profession or a portion of your livelihood, then you're a hobbyist. And there's no problem with that, and you can jump up and do things, but it's one of those things when someone sells themselves as something that they're not, that it actually takes away from our industry, and it takes away, there are people that I sell out for $25,000 for a gig, but they're asked for, they've got fame, and they tick all the right boxes for that person, for that company. So it's knowing your value to the industry as well. Yeah.
But if you're at that level as well, I mean, I had this conversation with someone recently who was in a similar situation, and it's completely understandable that you want the experience and you want the gig, and obviously you want the money as well. But it's also very easy to talk to a professional comic in who you're close to, you feel comfortable to, you feel compliments whatever you're doing, and try and work it out so that it's not just one of you showing up, it's both of you, and you can still sort of hit that rate, make sure that the client's getting a good experience, you're getting a good experience, that you've got someone else there who, even if you do 5, 10, 15, whatever, and that's what you can do, and you do it well, or maybe it goes horribly wrong, they're there as well. And that's I think that's also a great way to go about it that I haven't seen a lot of people take advantage of, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a very good idea.
I think it's just think about the audience and not yourself in sometimes. We do tours up in Cairns and Townsville, and I fly up for it because I'm managing the tour, and we also need an MC. Could I do that? Probably. But am I the best one for it? No. Could I save a lot of money to do it? By doing it myself? Yes. But it's about the audience and giving them a polished product, and I want them to have a great time. So I'll fly someone up who's competent, and can do it, and then they walk away going, that was a great gig. We'll see you next time. Next time we'll come up with another tour rather than bald bearded dickhead ruin the show.
We've got a couple more.
I was going to say,
questions.
Phoebe.
And it's also having the right elements. It's like making sure that there's like doing a corporate gig, you've got to make sure they've got lights for you so that the audience can see you, that they've got good speakers and microphones and all that sort of stuff. Because you want to reduce as many variables as you possibly can if you're doing a corporate gig. Because corporate gigs aren't easy. Because the majority of the people there aren't there for comedy. They're there because they've been invited there in some way, shape or form. It's
Their
like
bosses made them go.
Made them do it. It's like Paddo between November and December is different to the rest of the year because that's when we get Christmas groups and someone's gone, oh, we're going to do comedy for Christmas. And 90% of the people in the group are going, okay, we've got to go to comedy. So you have to win that audience over. You've got to have the right people on stage to be able to play an audience that actually aren't necessarily interested in comedy.
We've got a question, and we can come back, but we'll move on for another question for now. Jody says, how do you work out what your time or skill is worth? I feel I'm not experienced or skilled enough to charge much, but that means everyone in the show gets paid but me. What would be your advice to someone in that position, producers?
Can you say that question again?
Say it once more.
Did you have trouble when I spoke? Wow. How do you work out what your time or skill is worth? This is from a comedian. So how do you work out how much your time and skill is worth? I feel I'm not experienced or skilled enough to charge much, but that means everyone in the show gets paid but me.
How long's a piece of string, really? So what's the role? Do you know?
Are they producing or are they
No, they're a
running?
comic. So they're asking you producers how they value themselves.
I think what Fedele said earlier, in that ballpark of the,
Set like in normal club comedy, there's sort of set rates. It's like, and that's one of the things that always. Many years ago, when we were originally at Dockside and moved here, there was a bit of a war happening, and Brisbane rates are actually quite good compared to some of the other states. And they were actually other states have sort of moved up a little bit closer to what we're doing. But what I said to the people. Comics in Brisbane, I said, if you work for the other venue for less than what I'm paying, that's what I'm going to be paying. You'll get that becomes the new rate. So in some ways, if you're starting to get paid work and all that sort of stuff, you have to value yourself. Sometimes it's better to say no to a gig if they're not paying the right amount of money.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have a question from the floor.
I just want to say, I'll go with a question. How do you have a good relationship with venues, even if the venues are struggling to bring people into, say, the bar or sell tickets? How, as producers, can survive with a relationship with the venue management?
I think it's about being reliable. Like Josh has touched on it. Being reliable and offering good, reliable product as well. Good artists, really. Showing up, being on time, all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, venues, if we're going to talk more broadly about, weekly comedy nights or open mic nights or whatever, the majority seems to be that the venue will give you the space for free and you get to keep all the tickets, right? That seems to be, broadly speaking.
We don't work on that model.
No, I know, yeah. But like more generally, so you're doing, a bar in the valley or what have you, and they say, hey, we've got the band room isn't used on Tuesday nights. Cool, want to do comedy in there. They're giving you that space for free because no one's there and they want you to bring in people. That's how venues think. Right.
That's your job. Your job is to bring in the people as the promoter or the producer. The
venue doesn't care about anything other than return customers and drink sales. Right? Like if you go, oh, well, everyone, the comics had a really good time and blah, blah, they're like, okay, are we going to pay rent with a good time? Like that sounds harsh, but that's that's what a venue thinks. They want drink sales, they want food sales if they've got a kitchen, and they want repeat customers. And by being professional, showing up on time, having a good show, having quality acts, all that kind of stuff. That's what I think would make a venue happy. That's our venue's happy. You know, we do that.
It's a balance, because what I personally believe is the venue needs to invest something in that particular night as well. We put a lot of effort into our open mic rooms. We charge venues a flat fee that really doesn't cover our costs, because we put a lot of time and effort into it. But by having a venue pay something, that means they're investing in what's happening. But then you have to deliver a really good product. Like we do a lot of the marketing materials and all that sort of stuff for venues. We tend to have a mutually beneficial relationship with a venue. And our aim is to get people in, so they're drinking and eating, but also giving a good audience for the performers. And what I tend to find is it takes time. And the venues that back you and help you with promotion and you have a symbiotic relationship are the ones that last forever. Newmarket is a perfect example of a room that has been running for 15 years. In that 15 years, we're still charging them the same amount of money. We've never put the fee up of what we charge them to do the shows, but it's been a really good place for people to come through and learn and do stand-up. And unfortunately, at the moment, the ALH group aren't spending money on a lot of shows. They're holding back before they put things on, whereas AVC, which is another company, are investing in shows and doing that sort of stuff. Okay. Linda?
One job, Linda.
One job. That's it.
I was having a drink.
Jeez, Kat.
She's got a drinking problem.
Yeah, with regard about that, with my last venue, the Charles Collins Hotel, which is that's an ALH group hotel, they didn't do much for my show. I feel that they because they were struggling, because I was there for 3 months. When every time I go around and have a look in the venue, it's dead. There's nobody at the bar, nobody in the game room, and of course nobody's not buying my tickets for my show.
Yeah, but they're expecting you to come in and save their business, basically. Well, we've worked with a lot of ALH venues down in Gold Coast, yeah, and we establish a rate because we also for our weeklies run on a flat rate sort of thing, which makes us. It's a more difficult position to be in sometimes, I guess, because you're always worried if it's not working, it's not gonna they're just gonna cut it. But I mean, like the Dog and Parrot ran for 5 years before COVID, and most of our venues, I think pre-COVID, we'd had them for at least 18 months, so we had sort of a proven track record, which is good. But the venues are investing in the show, and that's really, really important. I think if you are going to a venue, I mean, Jake, from what you said, I think Good Chat's certainly the exception to this, because you've got a great space and you've got ticketed shows every week that do really, really well. But for those weekly shows, the venue is not going to support you. Unless they're investing something. And even then, sometimes they still fucking don't support you because they swap a manager out or someone, or they're just idiots or whatever it is. And
they don't use the marketing material you give them.
Yep,
all
anything.
that sort of stuff.
All of that stuff certainly happens. And I've had conversations with venue managers before where they're more pubby, which is also something that we've maybe moved away from a bit, especially post-COVID, was less pubby shows. We've had those conversations with venue managers, and I've said to them flat out, like, hey, having a comedy show on a Tuesday night is not going to, that's not your entertainment calendar. Like, you cannot just put us on and then be surprised that it hasn't flipped your revenue 100%. If you're not running entertainment throughout the whole way, and you have a venue that people want to come to in general, people aren't going to come. Like, it's we're not the most financially viable solution to your revenue problems.
We're just one component of food, everything else that they do at a venue. We're just one element.
We've got another question here.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, what measures do you have in place, if any, to kind of address offensive material that may come from comedians, whether that's a one-off or a regular instance, say transphobic, racist, sexist material?
Excellent question. I was wondering if this would come up today, actually. It's from a Brisbane Comedy Festival perspective. I think we have I feel like I have a responsibility to kind of not give those artists stage time. But the flip of that is that comedy is also holds up a mirror to the world. Some people have attitudes that you may not necessarily align with, and those people often have an audience. So it's quite a challenge. But personally, I won't program someone who is particularly offensive, transphobic, all those things you just listed. I think it's really important to not give those people a voice. But you know, there's a line you can go to, and there can be a lot of fun and joy and interesting conversation in that blurry part before it gets too much. It's about knowing where that too much part is, I think.
Yeah, it's a tough one. We've had instances at the club where people have gone up and said misogynistic stuff or transphobic or what have you. It's been few and far between because we're curated, so you know we can kind of weed out the scum that will go up and say real crook stuff. And I will say, you know, because there is the swivel-eyed lunatics will get out here and say anything if they have a microphone, right? So you do have to kind of vet that a little bit. Just letting them know it's not on. Hey, we're not going to book you again because of that, blah, blah. Like, I believe in growth. Absolutely, you know. Yeah, comedy's changed a lot in the last, like the post-Me Too era, obviously. We're all learning, that kind of thing. But yeah, just don't book them again. Don't give them stage time. They don't need a voice. And they'll
No pop players. Get rid of the pop players.
Yeah. It's just like, man, they'll find their own little room with their own, you know, other like-minded people, and it'll be in the outer suburbs, and they'll do that to 10 people, and it's fine, whatever. Go for your life, free speech, you know, each to their own, but not in my club. And you just have to say, does it align with my personal brand? You know, does that align with Good Chat? Does that align with Sit Down, Based, you know, Powerhouse? No, it doesn't. Cool. Sorry. Thank you very much.
I think at a festival level as well for GC Laughs, we've made decisions based on based on those things too. We've booked or not booked based on that. I'd say I'm probably relatively loose in terms of what I'm not happy with, but we tend to not curate, because it's curated, we tend to not put people on the lineups that I don't want to book people I think are shitbirds, really. So we do try and steer clear of that. There are plenty of people who I like and enjoy, and I think are great comedians who have done plenty of jokes that are, you know, pushing whatever sort of limit and maybe push past whatever sort of limit. But if I know that their intentions are in the right place, that's also a big contributing factor. The other thing that I was thinking earlier that I think ties into this is the number of people I've seen, especially in the like open and like support act circuit, doing political material of any kind and doing well is small, and there's a reason for that. It's because mostly people don't really want to fucking hear it. So I think most people do tend to steer away from that, and the ones that don't, they usually have their own audiences, and they get quite big on YouTube sometimes, and they're booking their own rooms, but we don't really have that much to do with them.
I've got another couple of questions here.
Thank you. Hi, I'm new and I'm a hobbyist. But if I see a venue in my area of where I live or work, are you guys interested in additional venues? Let's say I'm not interested in being a producer, but I see a venue that I think could potentially be an opportunity. Are you guys always, not always, but yeah, are you guys always looking for more locations? Obviously, there must be a cap to, scalability versus...
Always looking for new venues, but being a good producer is knowing when to accept it and when to move on, and that's the trick. It's not every venue is a good venue, and sometimes some venues that don't look like they're going to be good venues end up being fantastic venues. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, but it's always looking for new venues. Personally,
Yeah, look, it's the curse, I reckon. Now I get that the producer's curse. You walk into a new pub, and every time I get into a new pub or a new bar, I'll be like, yeah, all right, we'll put the stage there. Spotty, you go up there. That'd be sick. I reckon that'd be good. Yeah, it's always looking because hey, you could probably, I got drunk and walked into a bar in West.
Stop it.
Yeah, I know. And in West End. West End.
Wait, there was a bit before the being drunk?
Yeah. And I was looking around. It was really nice, and we thought, could we do a show here? I weighed up factors like, what's its local following? I was checking its Instagram profile, like how many followers does it have? What's the kind of vibe? What are the staff like? Got chatting to them, blah, blah. End up doing a show there a month later, sold out. But am I going to go, right, cool, well, that's going to make me that money. I'm going to do this one and then this one and this one. It's like, no, don't bite off more than you can chew. Focus on getting one really good. I reckon you get one really good humming that you don't have to worry about, and then I'd say then start expanding. If you start getting all these little projects and then you're just putting out spot fires, because here you're advertising to give away free tickets this one, and then you spend 8 hours of your day trying to beg people to come, and here's some promo codes, blah, blah, blah. There's time wasted, but it's just quantity versus quality there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, we're always looking for new venues. I think after we started running the Dog and Parrot, which is the first show that we're doing on Thursdays, it was going so well that like more people from it was ALH group for those guys, approached us about doing more shows, and then we haven't really approached a venue in a very, very long time. We usually get approached. But yeah, more venues is good. The great thing about the Gold Coast is because it's so fucking long, you can have a show in one suburb and then another show in a suburb just below it on the same night, and those people don't know the other people exist. It's amazing. And that's sort of been my model and idea for the market cap of, again, this is those weekly shows that I'm talking about specifically. But the potential market cap of the Gold Coast and what it could handle, I think it's higher than it seems from the outlook.
There's a question up the back.
Yep. Just quickly, just specifically with what Rowan was talking about before with Chardon's Corner. A few years ago, a different room was run there, which I believe it was an open mic where they weren't getting any fee from the venue at all. I think that's a good example of where comedy's been devalued to a venue, and then, that's obviously hurt Rowan down the track when he was running a room there. But yeah, other than that, how often are you talking to venues and sort of go into negotiations and then realise they don't realise what's needed for it? And yeah, how often are you turning down venues?
Well, how do you mean what's needed for it, I guess?
Budget and, I guess, budget and, I don't know, things like not having pool tables going right next to it and stuff like that.
I think, well, a venue, if I'm a bar manager or a venue manager, I don't know how comedy works. I might have been to comedy once, they don't understand what's involved. You have to lay it out for them, really spell it out.
Oh, I love Carl Barron, mate. Can't wait to get this going.
That's the kind of person
Can you get him?
Can we get... I've had that question so many times from people with budgets so small. It's incredible.
I've had that question from people with really big budgets, and Carl still won't do it. It's like, Carl just won't do anything but his own shows.
Yeah, and fair, good on him.
It's great.
So tell him you're not getting Carl Barron. No, but you have to
open with that every time.
You have to upwards manage a lot of these venues. Hey, we need a stage, we need a spotlight, we need speakers and a working microphone minimum. If you don't have any of those, if you don't have one of those things, do not do the show, because it's not a show. I cannot stress that enough. Stage, spotlight, working microphone, speakers. That's your top tier. Next one down. No pokies, no screens. The audience has to know that comedy's happening as well. So you need to be able to segment the bar or whatever. So it's not the experience that I've had when I was starting out in a handful of places. So I'd get on there and people turn around and be like, oh, is comedy on? You're like, what? Imagine trying to do jokes to them. Anyways, whatever. But yeah, so you need those bare bones things: stage, spotlight, microphone, speakers. I'm saying it again for anyone who missed it. And then,
Spotlight.
yeah.
Speakers. Well, that was our initial outlay for bass as well, is the shows that had been run, like the very first open mic that I took over from someone who was just fed up with it. They did have some PA stuff. It wasn't a great setup. But when we ran that first show, I was like, okay, well, we need, like, these are the things we need. We need lights, we need speakers, we need all this stuff. And that gave us the bases. And now, I guess also, because when we are approached by venues, anytime the big red flag for me is they say, like, oh, mate, we got a pretty good Thursday. There's lots of people in. Let's do it on Thursday. And I'm like, no. When is it not busy? Like, let's do it then, so we're not fucking off people who have come to have a chat or have come to have lunch with their family. Let's do it on the off night and try and bring more people in. It makes more sense for you. It makes more sense for us.
And don't throw your comics under a bus. If I can, I'm not a producer. I'm a professional comic. The amount of times I've helped out by doing a first night in a gig, I don't do it anymore because I'm old and hard. I don't
Do it
care
for
anymore.
me.
Do. But not to throw me under a bus. Yeah. The amount of times I've gone out there and they haven't had those things, or it isn't safe, or for whatever reason, it's just, there was one I did where they were expecting a corporate level show, which is clean. And I had open micers that don't do clean. So the show failed, they hated us, it was awful, and I got thrown under a bus, and I don't know what had happened in the communication, but if you're not clear with the venue what you can deliver, then you're going to set someone up to fail or to generally make it be the only time they ever do that, and there are ways for that not to be what happens. And that comic probably won't work for you again.
You definitely have to be specific. Like when I have the conversation with the venue, and we're doing an open mic room, I go, you will get a professional MC, 3 or 4 of the people will be shit because it's going to be their first time, and you don't overplay it. Tell them the truth. You'll get probably 3 or 4 comics that are pretty good, and then you'll get 3 or 4 comics that are really good. But that's the night, and that's what you want. It's like people do enjoy seeing people fail. Audiences do get off on that.
Yeah, we did crowd control last night, and there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
And we have a question down here. Oh.
Hi. First of all, thank you all for today. Venues invest in, and you were talking about you charge them a rate that you haven't changed for a while. What's your rate?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to give away.
I'm not going to give away our. They're our trade secrets.
We have a I guess a pretty standard idea. Like I don't know what Fedele charges for.
Yeah,
I don't know what
that's
Josh
all right.
charges.
The reason why I'm asking is simply because I got to charge a venue a rate right now, and you're talking about undervaluing the product that we're going to sell. I want to know what the rate is so I cannot screw us over.
Well, how much are you going to pay the headliner? How much are you going to pay the MC?
I'm paying the headline 150 to 200.
Yeah.
The MC 250.
So that's 400.
So there's one bloke coming up that's going to be at 300 fairly soon. If he's still on, if he's not, it's okay. No names mentioned. But I need to know how much money I got to charge these blokes.
Yeah. Well, so you've got the headliner at 200. You got an MC at 200. How much you have any tech overheads?
Yeah, I'm gonna take the overheads. I'm gonna sell tickets. Take the overheads.
No, technical overheads.
Technical
production.
Like sound and lighting.
I'm doing all of that.
So you're running that?
I bought all the gear that I need.
You got all the gear?
I got all the gear that I need.
And how much are you charging yourself out for to do the tech? What do you value that as for yourself? Like your alley.
I'm investing in my business.
Oh, yeah, I know. I'm just saying.
No, I can understand what you're saying, but I'm new. And
what would you like to pay a tech? I'm saying.
What would I like to pay?
If you were to pay someone.
Well, I don't know how much a tech charges.
Why don't we stop this? Why don't we do it as a hypothetical?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So I'm saying if you're paying 200 for the headliner, and you're paying 200 for the.
Okay. No, let him finish. Thank you. You can let him finish. Thank you.
I'm saying if you're paying 200, if you've budgeted 200 for the MC, 200 for the headliner, and whatever for someone to run tech, and then whatever for marketing, then that's how much the show that you've put together is worth, and then you should be charging the venue that or higher, or slightly higher maybe, to make it viable for you to continue running shows and for you to continue growing shows as well, so you have some kind of cash flow and growing capital, so you have you're able to upgrade equipment, or when that spotlight breaks, you're able to get another one, and it's not running at a deficit.
And it's not coming out of your own pocket.
Yeah. So you value
after you've started.
You cover the costs of the show, and then you value your own time, and then you look at what you want to be doing in 3 months, 6 months, a year. How it's supposed to scale. Is it going to scale by running bigger shows, or looking at something like Powerhouse, where you're running shows in larger theatre style rooms? Is it going to scale by doing where I think we were doing 11 shows a week before COVID, and that was one way that we scaled, as well as Cheesy Laughs and our Saturday shows at Hodder. So that's how we define our rate at Based. We go, what are we paying people, and then what is the venue getting, and then there's also, like, if it's weekly compared to monthly. We look at it holistically too. How much money is this going to bring in for us over a month, over 6 months? If it's a once a month show, that's gonna be more. If it's a weekly show, it's going to be less. There's a lot of things that go into that calculation. I'm sorry I can't just give you a rate, because I feel that it's.
There's so many variables.
There are so many variables, and I'm sure Fedele's rates for Newmarket are different for my rates for what we're running at the park in Coomera.
Can I just say as well, room capacity changes everything.
Oh yeah. You got to think, what can they actually make? Hospitality is a very fucking difficult business. There are very, very thin margins in there, and I feel that a lot of the venues that we're working at, where we're doing, I think we're currently doing like $20 entry with a drink, which we started doing to weed out. We started doing it at the Avenue, because the first night we had 140 people in there. And they turned 60 or so away. They were so stoked, and then the front two tables sat there drinking waters all night. They didn't buy anything at all, and they ran it for free. And then they switched up that model, or to that model, which I think makes sense for them. But yeah, it's thin margins. Like it needs to. It's difficult for them too. So if it's a 30-seater room, you got to go, okay, well, if you're charging this much at the door, then this is going to work. If it's a 50-seater room, you go, okay, cool. Well, maybe there's more budget there than what we've been running down the road. Sorry, I waffled a bit there, but I hope you get my point.
I think you got there. We have a question from Regan, who asks, when an unknown out-of-state comic approaches you, what do you want to see in their promo packet?
I've never been sent a promo packet.
I
would love that. I've been sent unsolicited Facebook Messenger requests. I've never been sent a promo packet.
Mate, look, if someone's approaching me and they say, I'm coming up from Melbourne, I'm coming up from Adelaide, personally, I talk to people who I know in that city.
Yeah, same. And I do that I don't get around a lot in Brisbane, so I've been calling Josh and other people and going, who are you seeing that is doing well locally?
I feed him all the wrong information.
He does.
But more to that point that Shannon brought up before about people who do crook gear, that carries through as well. So if someone I know in Melbourne or Adelaide or Sydney, and we all know this people, message me and go, hey, so-and-so's coming down. Nah. Sexist gear, don't do it. So that is also weeding that out in another way, just so I mentioned that.
So I mean, different answer for you from a festival point of view.
From a festival point of view, I want to see how many people are in your audience. So how many people would come to your show? If you're from out of state and you're new in Brisbane, for example, how does that carry? Do you have a really strong Facebook following that I can tap into, that you've got, people who've seen you in Sydney who will then say to their Brisbane friends, go and check out this show. I want to see how your network works and how you can market yourself, so that turns into ticket sales. And good video, as well. I always watch YouTube and, reels and check out content. So really good online content as well is something that's really important.
Can I just say from a festival perspective to add on to that as well? So for like the GC Laugh Scala, where we know what we're going to get in terms of an audience. It's not like we're trying to push tickets through one name alone, like it's a solo show we're trying to sell out. We try and feature acts in there as well, not only who are performing at the festival, but acts that we think have unique voices or have something different to offer, so that the audience at that gala is exposed to it, and maybe someone is sitting there and they've never seen something like Sam Campbell before, and they see Sam Campbell and they think it's hilarious, or they didn't think they would enjoy Danielle Walker, but suddenly they're buying tickets to see her show on the Thursday night. That's another thing that we consider too, is unique, different. That's yeah.
Hi. I've got a question. It's a bit of a hybrid middle ground between performer and producer. And it's a question for everyone, even Kat, if you would like to have your input as well. In regards to transparency around selection criteria, so say for example, like going back to earlier, someone wants to go from hobbyist to career, that wants to take it seriously, wants to go from beyond 10 to 20, 20 to 30 and go to those headline spots. What would be that selection criteria that you would say, and while we've got everyone here, to have sort of like a uniform standard to say, like, to get from this spot, you know, you need to, this is what you need to do to have that expectation from the performer, and then in return, this is what you can then expect from us as the producer.
I'd say, so if I'm going to, I'll talk about, okay, an open micer, someone who's never done a paid spot for us, and then they go up to do a support spot, which is a 10 on the Friday, right? And that's our lowest kind of rung of where you get paid. Cool. Reliable, polite, that just goes so far, do you know what I mean? Polite, just having an average, you can bomb sometimes, that's okay, whatever. If someone bombs and I see them, I don't go, oh no, that's it, never getting booked again, you know, everyone bombs. But to have a constant, like a 6 to 7 out of 10 average all the time, they're reliable, they turn up on time, they can read the room, they stick to their time, you know, those are the kind of key things.
I think the reading of the room is a really big one.
Oh yeah.
Very much so, because like for our venue, a Friday night to a Thursday to a Saturday, all those crowds are very different. And it's understanding the crowd. It's the amount of people that I see sitting at the back of the room and not watching what people are doing, or the people that are on stage. Because the best lesson you can have about any audience is watching the act before you. And, you know, I see it sometimes in open mic rooms where people jump up and die on the arse and they leave straight away and don't stay and watch the rest of the show. Because there's going to be 2 or 3 people in that night that do really well. And that's where you ponder, why is that person doing well? What am I doing that isn't similar to that person? And I'm not talking about material, it's about connection with the audience or whatever it is. And it's understanding those things and being able to work well with someone or a group of people. We do ocean liners. So on those ocean liners, you're working with people a couple of hours a day, but then you're with them for another week sometimes, or 3 or 4 days. You've got to be someone that's easy to live with as well, especially when you're touring.
I think funny, consistent, easy to work with. It's just those 3 things.
Yeah.
What an insight you guys are getting.
Once
Be
you're
funny.
Once you're funny enough and consistent enough, we will put you on to. I mean, it's not even we'll put you on a headline. You will receive recognition, and you will be getting recognition from Brisbane Comedy Festival, from GC Laughs, from all over the store will want to book you. It's about those things.
Yeah, consistency, being consistent and consistently good and consistently learning and all those kinds of things do also help build your audience as well, because if you and your profile, keeping the that same product each time people see you is also part of it.
And developing as you go. It's that thing of consistency, being consistent. Oh, you made me think of something, and now it's just gone. It just disappeared. It was the answer. It was the secret to everything.
Okay, I was just going to say, writing new gear as well, new jokes, new stuff. I see the same sets or the same jokes wheeled out from 3 years ago. And I know all of everyone's sets. I know them all back to back now. I'm like, are you still doing that one, bruz? Like, you know. And it's fine to have the old classics, that kind of thing, but be developing as well. When you see someone who's getting out there, taking it seriously, you know, putting out new gear, and it's, you know, just trying to write new stuff and growing. When we see someone growing, then that's the biggest thing. I know that's very broad, but, you know, apart from all those other concrete things, when you see someone growing and wanting to do better, that's a big one as well.
I think I've been doing this for 24 years now, I think. And the people I've seen leapfrog me, and they well should, are the people that have respect for the craft. So they do all the things, they turn up on time, but they also ask for advice and they receive it well. And they watch the other comics. And that doesn't mean you watch and emulate necessarily exactly what they do, but you watch and don't make the mistakes they made on the same night. Don't ask the same question to the same audience member on the same night. And have respect for yourself as well. Don't turn up drunk. Don't speak during the other acts. And I know I sound like 100 years old at the moment, but those things are noticed. And someone who is funnier than you, but you may still get their spot if that person was being a fuckhead. So just be respectful, and be respectful of your own time. This is it's a marathon if you want to do this for a living for your whole life. So think about what that looks like for you. Treat it like a job. Otherwise, it will eat you up.
And time is irrelevant. There are people that sometimes you see that have been doing it for 10 years and they're still in the same spot. They haven't moved on. They're still doing open mics. And I'm not talking like Damien Power, who still jumps up and does open mics, because he does them to learn and to keep improving. I'm talking about people who haven't gone past open mic. Time is not a factor. I have people coming up to me going, I've been doing this for 7 years. I deserve this. I deserve a paid spot, or I deserve a 20-minute spot.
This is not a treadmill.
Yeah, actually, for proof, so I've been doing this for 4 years, and as an occasional comic, I've only started getting paid to do 10-minute supports this year at Sit Down. So 4 years.
Yeah. Well,
and as a, like I have a room that I can do this at, do you know what I mean? But you got to respect, and more to what you were saying there, I didn't start getting anywhere as a comic until I started taking it seriously and not turning up pissed. And or just really thinking about writing stuff and reading the room, and it does take time, even from, that's my lived experience.
And what Jake said before, that was on the tip of my tongue, is like we do 10-minute spots on the Gold Coast because it is more of a drive, it's more of a hassle, it's more annoying, but we want people to be able to stretch their legs. But goddamn, the number of times I see people show up and do the same fucking 10 minutes they did the night before. Do 2.5 of your old stuff, do 5 new, do 3 new, do 1 new minute, something, and then go back to it. You can be doing new material, you can be developing all the time. And there is certainly something to say for stagecraft. You got a raw set, whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. I hope you get the spirit, which I mean.
It's not. I just want to add to what you're saying. It's not jumping up and doing the same set. It's jumping up and making the same mistakes. It's like you can be doing the same set, and it works in one place and then it won't work somewhere else. It's learning from doing it and making it better.
Yeah, why haven't you rewritten all of your jokes 4 times until they're as funny as they could possibly be? Everything could be, there could be tags on all of it.
Yeah,
and
adding to it. And
yeah, if you don't write stuff down, write it down and then look at it and go, oh, this would work. Maybe this would work. If you only write stuff down, get on stage and say some stuff, and don't be afraid to just stand there for a second in the silence and try and riff through into something new as well.
Because sometimes some of the best material comes from those moments. And that's one reason why we film all the shows and we give people access to that material, because you do a throwaway line one night and it works really well, and that should actually become part of your set because it's a beautiful line. And that's the very reason why we do that.
Yes.
All right, this is actually not a question as such. It's just sort of a bit of a statement. Yeah, it's a bit of a statement. Before I actually even registered my company, I called you, Fedele, to ask you. And I want what you want, trust and reputation from not only the industry, but my colleagues, as well as people that I will work with. Mm-hmm. And that's all I want. I just want to know.
So what you got to do is just do the
And-
job properly and
that's,
communicate.
and that's all I'm trying to do. So,
Yeah.
so that's basically it. That's all I want, man. That's all I want.
I would also like those things.
Me too. Was there another one there, Linda? Yay.
So just so again, as a hobbyist, how often should I be trying to get an open mic? Is it once a week, once a month, once a fortnight? What should I aim for, keeping in mind that this is not any part of my paid job, but obviously I'd like to advance. So is there a guideline that you guys have seen in the past going, this person did at least one a fortnight, and that, I mean, obviously everyone's different.
I think every person's different. You know, I equate it similar to being a sportsman. If you're like a weekend person that plays cricket, you can do a little bit of training and you'll keep most of the stuff that you got. But what I talk, the guys that are doing this professionally, you're a professional athlete. If you're not up performing that week as an act doing your 20, 30, 40 minutes or whatever it is, you should be spending 15, 20, 30 hours thinking about your act. And that might be going out to see other things or being inspired in some way, shape or form, but you should be working on your craft. And sometimes that's going out and doing acting classes or doing other things, because where you get inspiration is different for every person. But it's all levels, you know. If you're starting out and you want to improve quickly, if you can get up every night of the week, do it. There's a famous story about Arsenio Hall. He used to turn up at nightclubs, pay the DJ to turn the music off, and do a 10-minute spot. And if he could win that audience over, that's how he knew he was getting better, because he could win those audiences that didn't want to see him.
Mm. And it was also like
Probably going, who's Arsenio Hall?
I think
Hang on a sec. We'll come to you in a tick.
I think as much as you want. If doing a gig once a week is good and you feel like you're developing from that, that's great. And if you're having conversations with other comedians and you're working on gear, and if you're getting what you want out of it, that's the most important thing for you. It might not be the most important thing to make you bookable or sort of launch you into being a huge success. And I think those, like, it's a very difficult. Kat, you can certainly attest to this. It's a very difficult job to make your job. It's really, really tough, and it weeds out 90% of people.
Yep.
Are unfortunately not going to get to that point where their living is made from comedy, and it is hard work. And the reason it's hard work is because it's so much fun, and it can be so much fun. And also, you're only really working an hour a night, which is fucking great. But the road to get there is not going to be paved with gold. It's going to be a shit fight to get to that point.
And the thing is, the person that's working an hour a night is doing a hell of a lot of work outside of that. Like, Dave Hughes is a perfect example of someone who works his ass off. He's doing gigs all the time in different places. He'll have a gig. He turned up one night here to test his material out for the Logies that were on the Gold Coast.
Well, there's another season of The Block coming up. I think he wants to buy one of those houses.
Oh yeah, well, he's
run
making
out of millions. You had a question.
Yeah, to master a skill.
Explain that to him.
You become an expert at something if you've done 10,000 hours, and when you're doing 5 minutes at a time, that takes quite a long time.
But everything contributes to that 10,000 hours too. It's not just about the stage time. I mean, that's a huge part of it. Like I said, it's not. You can sit at home with a guitar and get pretty good, but you can't stand in front of the mirror with what's that thing called that you comb your hair with? With a hair comb, a brush, with a hairbrush.
Why are you asking me what a hairbrush is called?
That's a good point. That's a very good point. I looked the wrong direction for that.
So mean.
From elsewhere in the country, Sam asks, what would the panel say are the must-haves for a new room to run well? For example, audio-visual space. So when you're sizing up a venue, what things are you physically looking at?
We provide all of that. That was core for us.
We're the same.
No, the space, as in how big is the place? How much room does it need to have? Those kinds of things, I believe, is the question.
So harking back to before, not just having the stage and the lighting, but where is the stage going versus the rest of the room, right? So there used to be a room over in Wollongabba or something like that, and it had a stage, but then the path to get to the toilets was by the stage, and it was awful.
So many places like
Yeah.
that.
So you just want to look at that and go, think about it logistically. If you're a punter and if you're a comic and blah blah blah, I know. So where the layout is, where the bar is, where the toilets are, blah blah. Kind of space it out. Where's the spotlight going to go? Will that be, enough distance? All that kind of stuff. Actually kind of map it out.
And what you can do with it too, like if you have a place like that, can you put a curtain in the way to make a thoroughfare that isn't gonna fuck with the show? Can the spotlight go? I think at Last Night on Earth we have the spotlight mounted with these giant clamps that go on one of the beams up the top because there's nowhere to put a spotlight, and that works a lot better. And some of these rooms, Roosevelt Lounge, these small rooms that we've had, Scottish Prince, some terrible sight lines in there, and Last Night on Earth, they look like they shouldn't work, but sometimes they're so small, they're so intimate, you can kind of overcome those obstacles too. So I try not to write anything off just by walking in, because I've made that mistake too many times.
Phoebe?
I find end on stage, theatre style, really straight, low roof, the best kind of comedy rooms. I mean, outside of using a venue that has a bar attached to it. Brisbane Comedy Festival used to do shows in City Hall, and it was hell because there's nothing like low and dark and small and tight about rooms in City Hall. They're all nice and big and open and fresh.
I think we had Dusty in one of those rooms, and it was huge.
It was really, you want your audience to be like one organism, to be one body, so that your artist only has to make a handful of people laugh in that organism for it to spread to the entire room. I think that's when I'm ever building venues for Comedy Festival, that's what I look for, low roof, end on.
That's why all the Brisbane comedy, all the powerhouse spaces they are all so intimate, all the spaces you use for comedy. Graffiti Room is such a perfect room for emerging artists. It's 30 seats, it's tiny, it's packed in, but it feels nice to be in there.
Shoulder to shoulder. You want that really, it's not COVID safe, but you want your audience to be nice and tight and together.
And close to the stage.
Yeah.
All those things. It's the bane of any promoter is posts. So many venues that we deal with have posts in the worst places, Like there are venues where you got a stage like this and there'd be a post on the corner, just here. And it's just, we used to do an L-shaped room that weirdly worked well. We were in the back corner, we were in the corner of the L, and you played to two sets of people.
Which one?
I can't remember the name of it. I've done so many rooms.
Cat's going to verify whether it actually worked
I'll tell you
well.
if it was any good.
No, I'm trying to remember what it was. But it was L-shaped, and you're in the bottom corner of it, so you played to two different crowds.
Was it Forest Lake?
No. I'll remember. It'll come back.
Aloha Bar had that as well.
We've got a couple of questions, actually.
Yes.
Hello, a big fan of all of your work.
Especially loved you on Nova, Shad.
Ball Guard, not so much. But I get booked to MC a lot for you guys, which is great. Please keep doing that. But I get asked by a few comics, especially people who've been working up because Brisbane comedy's going nuts, about how to do MCing. And I thought it'd be cool for the producers that actually pay the people to do the job to probably say, what does a comic need to become an MC? What's their role in the gig? And what is your expectations of what they should do for that show?
What I tell people who are hosting a show, a host doesn't have to be it's not important for a host to be funny. It's good that they're funny, but they are the tour guide. They're the ones that the audience need to feel comfortable with. And it's like, come to my zoo and see the animals, in a way. And you're taking them on a journey. And that's the important thing. A really good MC shines a little bit, but doesn't outshine the other acts.
I've seen a bunch of hosts who have been great hosts because they have fucking died, and it was such a relief to get the first act on.
You said we wouldn't talk about that again. But it's a rough night.
But in general, I think like having good jokes and good bits is obviously critical for the setup for the show, because you want the audience to know this is what the night is going to be. You want them to have something to expect. You don't want someone to be just wacky. Like, this is why Dusty is so hard to follow at the Arc, because it's the Dusty Rich show featuring Dusty Rich and some other cunts. and Dusty Rich is just a nightmare on stage, and he's not prepared anything, and he's being loose, and he's yelling about God knows what. And he goes, I'm smashing the bell, going, get off the stage, please. And he finally brings an act on. He's like, hi, I was at the beach the other day, and the audience is like, what is this? This is not what we were watching. And there are acts that we've been trying to move into sort of MC roles who have the gear there, but they're too stilted, and it takes a while, but they do eventually loosen up, and they're able to talk to the audience and make them feel comfortable, and the audience doesn't feel like they've switched on a television. They feel like they're at a show. There's interaction there, and Shad, you do a very, very good job of that, which is why you won crowd work last night. Yeah. Yeah. A woman threw a shoe at him because he called her a bitch.
Oh, wow.
It was pretty good. It's very funny.
Oh, wow. Any other thoughts? What's a good MC?
Well, I was just going to say, no. As a performer, if you want to go into being an MC, if you think you're that kind of comic, and then as a producer, just because someone's funny doesn't mean they're a good host. Dan Rath, I wouldn't give Dan Rath an MC spot. Is he one of my favourite comics? Absolutely. Luke Heggie, love him. Do not make him MC. Like, there's. Yeah, you have to have a good host. If I'm going to name drop again, Ben Darso from Adelaide is one of the most positive people I've ever met, and he emceed our room, and he did the first 15 minutes and didn't tell a joke. And he was doing this crowd work where it was just like, oh, what's your name? What do you do? The person says, oh, I'm a carpenter. He goes, wow, working with your hands, fantastic. And then move over, I'm like, he's not telling jokes. But everyone was having such a good time, and it was just this personal, positive energy, blah, 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 and then he talked about how the night's going to work, and then he brought people on as one of the best MCs we had. Was he very funny? No. Was he very likeable? Yes. And Ben Darso is very funny, I should say. But
when he does his act, he's very
funny. Sorry, as an MC, he was just so likeable. So be likeable. I don't know.
They've got to trust you to pick them back up again if someone dies. That's what a good MC can do. You don't have to come out and smash over the top of that person, although sometimes, sure. But you have to be, when you come back out, they have to be like, oh, thank God you're here.
And just one joke will lift the audience up again.
You have to be their trusted companion. A question down here?
Hi. So there's a heap of smaller shows around Brisbane now. So not just like you guys, but there's a shitload of like smaller shows coming out. Do you guys see a value in maybe like some sort of Brisbane comedy gig guide, or is that sort of adding to what you were saying before about maybe devaluing the industry a bit? Like, are there too many shows at the moment?
If those shows are open mic show, for me personally, advertise what it is. Don't advertise a show that's an open mic show as a professional show. If it's a professional show, advertise it as a professional one. But don't sell it as something that it's not.
Yeah. I think comedy begets comedy in that, the more rooms around, the better, but those rooms need to be run well, right? So
the more rooms of a certain standard.
Yeah, absolutely, because, like we had a gig we had a gig in a suburb, and, another gig had maybe failed in that same suburb, and then as a punter, right, so say I've just gone, all right, I'm going to go to, comedy and whatever, and I was a terrible show, hated it. And then that kind of ruins the vibe in that suburb. They just went to see comedy. They're not going to remember whether it was good chat or sit down or best or
they
whatever
don't tell their
was.
friends, oh, I went and saw blah at Broadbeach, like this comedy show at Broadbeach. They say, oh, I went to comedy at Broadbeach. They don't distinguish whether it was a bass show.
Or comedy at the Gold Coast, more broadly. And you burn the seat,
and it was terrible. And you're like, I didn't run that one. Come to one of mine. I'll make it better, I promise.
There are rooms, like... that I haven't run that people think I run. And vice versa. People think that Josh is me sometimes.
Well, that's because I tell them I own sit down.
Yeah.
When the gig dies. Oh, that was them.
But bringing back to the gig guide idea, I mean, yes, but I think there'd have to be a curated guide.
What do you mean by a
like,
gig guide?
I mean, like, if you're a punter in Brisbane and you're looking for comedy in Brisbane, you Google Brisbane comedy, you're going to come to Sit Down. Like, that's... and there's so many...
I work very hard at that.
Yeah, I know. I know that may be good for you. But, I mean, I'm not sure if that's great for the industry as a whole because there's quite a lot of other really good shows on. And I think a lot of the time, people don't really know how to look for them. And we kind of advertise shows to other comics, which is not a great thing.
If you're running a room, you should be throwing yourself onto every free listing and everything you possibly can.
Yeah, there are so many websites that already cater for these things, like your event finders for Gold Coast. It's what's on GC for
all those sort of things.
Yeah, so there's so many of them, and I think that I don't think it's a bad idea, and I get where you're coming from. But the problem that I see with it is that we are currently doing a panel with a bunch of people for a very, very niche thing that no one else thinks about 99.99% of the time. Like this is the biggest group of losers, and I mean it in the loveliest way possible. But most people go to a comedy show once in a year, and that's a lot. Like that is a lot that they think about stand-up comedy, or they saw Jim Jeffries' special on Netflix or whatever, and that's it. I don't think there are a lot of people going there going, oh, comedy gig guide Brisbane. There are lots of people going, what's on in Brisbane, and they'll go to those websites, and that's where you should be placing those things.
Very much so.
Yeah. Phoebe, for Powerhouse, I think that's quite interesting. How do you manage event listings?
It's also about Google algorithms and how you the I didn't know much about it honestly, but the marketing kind of code words in search types and how you get your listing to be at the top. Like there's all of that as well.
And it changes every week.
Yeah.
Virtually. It's so hard to do.
Yeah, I used to work in SEO, and that's another thing too. If you've set up a site specific for whatever, like we just I just recoded the base site, and we have to have like canonical tags and for the event name, the venue, the time, the links, like where you buy tickets, all of that stuff, so that when you search comedy and you're in the Gold Coast, it pops up in the little calendar thing, and you can press a button and you can go there rather than having to go through external links. But that stuff is all like I guess that's also stuff that you can do.
And it takes a lot of work. Just jumping into sort of the things that are sort of happening in this community, the comedy community. Like Jake and I, like a lot of people will do Jake's room early or late, and they'll run down to here and do a spot here, and that's been happening more and more. And it's one of those things like years ago there used to be a nightclub across the road from the Paddo, and they were never competition to the Paddo. They complemented, and Good Chat is just up the street. We complement each other. We play very different audiences and different crowds, and if people are seeing shows at different styles and all that sort of stuff, it's just good for the industry.
If we can bring up the C word. No, not that one.
Cash.
Yes, COVID.
Yeah.
How have things changed as producers, the way that you did things beforehand, the way you do things now? So for these guys, if they're starting out or they're trying to get a room back up again or any of those things, how has the world changed in ways that they should consider so that they can put the best foot forward with their shows?
I don't have any money anymore. I don't know where it's gone, but it's all gone. But that was a big thing for me. Is they make you, I'm sure you've filled out a lot of grant applications. I'm sure we've all filled out a lot of grant applications, and they make you calculate how much money you've lost, and it is pretty brutal. That's the big thing. Is a lot of venues have restrictions in place now that mean that if there's a new like mask mandate or whatever, like the Avenue can't run at the moment because they're over 200 square meters, and it's 2 rooms, but it's counted as one space. So if they've got people in the restaurant, they can't have people in the back room, so comedy can't work there. So I guess there are a lot of things like that to think about. It sort of changes the equation in a lot of ways. We've had so many shows cancel, interstate acts come through, Comedy Underground. I mean, that last lockdown we had, I woke up and they're like, yeah, you can't do anything tonight, and we had lost several $1,000s in revenue just for that night. Done, gone, all gone.
And then it's a time just cancelling, like your experience from the last lockdown.
That was horrible. Two years in a row we had to cancel mid-festival, which is just horrible and harrowing. But I think it's about keep going, like just keep working and keep pushing and keep trying. And I'm actually really excited about what's going to happen when this is over and we're living with COVID properly, because you will hopefully have new shows, and because everyone's been sitting and working and trying new things, I'm really excited about that. It's also been interesting with Brisbane Comedy Festival, and I'm hoping I can get into it a bit more in 2022, is showcasing more local talent, because the borders are shut. Like, they can't come in, and I think like Damien Power and Mel Buttle had the best year she's ever had, and I think that's because there's less artists in Brisbane. We can't bring internationals, we can't bring interstate people in, so audiences are just seeing the local people, which is really exciting.
I think it's an advantage too, because they're starting to appreciate what actually exists. Because we actually have really good local talent. A lot of the people that are going interstate and doing well interstate have come from Queensland. Like the people that are coming through down there. Doing stand-up in Brisbane is, there's so many different sorts of venues and all that sort of stuff. And it's trial by fire, but you're able to work crowds. There's often people, I find, over the years that have come from different states and they come to Brisbane and they find it really difficult to do Brisbane crowds.
We also had to cancel GC Larson the same way you did, Phoebe, and it was it's brutal because he spent 6 months on it, and then it's like, I think we got the gala out and it was closed. We went into that big lockdown on the Monday, so we had the one show where everyone is sort of backstage going, "Oh, this is bittersweet. Like, this is a huge room, it's full, but this is all that's happening." And it screws up your roadmap completely, because it means that we didn't have 2 years in a row to build on. We weren't able to add in. We have a smaller venue at Home of the Arts in the Gold Coast that we want to use as a small 30-40 seater specifically for local talent. Because I guess as a new festival, we've found it's difficult enough to attract people to come to the bigger shows, let alone trying to then do your bit for emerging artists in those first few years. So those things are annoying setbacks as well.
We have a question down there.
Rowan would like to know, once we're all living with COVID, how to best set up a tour for comics. What's involved? What do you need to do? What sort of outlays? Any advice on setting up a tour?
If you're thinking like regional or...
I'm planning to do like a 3-day regional tour of Caboolture, Maroochydore and Kings Beach, Caloundra.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'd say obviously make sure you're across all of the restrictions. That's a key thing. There are grants that you can look at specifically for touring artists, and making those tours viable and making them work. Make sure you're getting the support from the venues, and then from my personal experience, make sure that you haven't, you're not the one to have outlaid a shitload of money, because when it cancels the day before, it's all on you, and
it's all gone.
It really sucks.
I also think a strong brand or a hook, because if an audience in Caboolture sees another, people talk. I thought it's a really great show, and I want to, I tell you all about it. If you've got a really good product that's got a hook or something different, something unique, people will talk about it as well, which helps.
I think for the people looking at starting to produce now during COVID, you're probably working with an advantage because you don't know any different. When we started our club in the early 90s, we were going through the recession we had to have, or we would become a banana republic. That was what we were. We knew nothing. We started with very little money. the only reason why we survived is we did well on our first show and we just rolled out. And what I've found is every 6 to 7 years, you've got to reinvent yourself in some way, shape or form. The business changes. So I think the advantage, I think COVID is, for me personally, has given us an opportunity to jobs that I've been wanting to do for 10 years, stuff that I've been wanting to do in this club, I've been able to do. But I've also had to trim so much fat and make my business so lean that we are still making a profit. And we're able to pay people and do all that sort of stuff. And I think COVID has shown us how little we need to actually survive.
It's changed the way you plan as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's the same for all of you. You used to plan a lot further ahead. Is that the same for you guys?
Oh, we've changed completely. I mean, we had interstate and local artists booked for solo shows at Home of the Arts and for full tours all the way through till, I think, October, and they're all cancelled. Every single one of them. And we even had ones that could have gone ahead, but because of venue capacities, they don't go ahead. So now instead of it being like, what's happening in 3 months, it's what's happening in 3 weeks. And just, yeah, because the most painful thing for me has been doing a week's worth of work and then on the Friday having to redo the week of work. And that's, I think, you really start to get into the sort of downward spiral mental illness part of it.
Because it's not just redoing that work, it's cancelling all that work and then redoing it again. It's like, it's continual.
And can I just say, from a punter's point of view, ticket purchasing behaviour has changed. Because is it going to, I want to go see Mel Buttle in Cairns. Is it going to happen? Like, where we'd normally have, I think pre-COVID, you'd have people go, I need to go see that. I'm going to get it before it sells out. Now people are like, they'll buy the week of, because it's like, is there going to be a lockdown? Is it going to be a lockdown? Then, the refund requests have to come through, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, I mean, regional towns, in my experience, have always been a last minute market anyway. But now especially, you're going to find that, the ticket sale anxiety is going to triple with COVID.
They've been buying later, but like ours have been pretty good with refunds, right? Like,
yeah, it was interesting with this year's festival. It was actually, we had beaten last year's sales by a remarkable amount. So I was quite, because I thought that people wouldn't buy, but absolutely were, to the point of smashing like records. But since this last lockdown, it's really stopped. Like people won't buy until the day. It's been quite interesting. Week of, day of.
Saturday night, the hottest show, it's a Friday night. That's when we see the biggest spike in sales. We've had shows that have sold, I think, 13 tickets, and then the next day, 65 people have shown up. Like, where were you guys?
Especially coming out of the big COVID lockdown last year, coming out, we were selling out weeks in advance because people were like, oh my God, is the apocalypse over? What's going on? And then they were purchasing well ahead of time. Now that there's so much uncertainty with all this Delta and whatever's going on, the rollout, and there's lockdowns popping up, border closures left, right and centre, 2021 is more uncertain than 2020 in very many, in a lot of ways. And now we're seeing that switching back from, we have to book ahead because we want to go out. Now it's like, we'll wait. It might get cancelled.
But they're generally pretty understanding about refunds. Like, we haven't had any major complaints from purchasers going, upset because box office has taken a couple of days to refund their money or whatever. So that is at least nice, is kind of because we're all in this together. No one's having a whinge.
Question down here. Hello.
Hello again.
Hi.
This will be my last question. Probably John Farm of questions at this point. This is the last time. Around performer feedback, and sort of bridging back to just a couple of the previous questions. Like, for example, from the performer side, what's the best means of delivering, say, for example, like a referral from another performer, or like if it's submitted a video, or just generally being there in the audience. And then on that note, from the producer side, the best means of receiving that feedback, like through Facebook or email, what is the preference? And then in evaluating, what then would be the factor of like the audience versus, like I guess the perception of the audience versus, I guess the best way to put it, like how much the audience would factor into that feedback, if that makes sense, I guess. Maybe a little.
You lost me.
I'm lost.
Sorry,
do you mean
lost a bit of work? I guess.
Are you asking for the balance between if we're seeing a comic getting good audience response.
Yeah, because there are times where, and I'm sure we're all aware, like you might get good feedback from a certain audience, but then if you go in another room, that might not be the same. So then I guess that ratio of feedback, like,
it comes down to consistency.
Yeah,
It's being one of the things for me when we were running a number of open mic rooms, and this was our rule, was you play every room. You can't go, I just want to play Newmarket, because the reality is Newmarket was the reward, but the lessons come from all the other rooms. And that's the thing. It's you need to be able to play everything, because for me as a promoter and for someone that actually books quite a lot of people for corporate gigs, I've got to feel comfortable in being able to send that comic, because a lot of times I've got customers that have been coming back for 10 years, you know, and they book 2 or 3 people every year for their corporate gigs, and they're trusting me to put the right person in, and I need to believe that that person can deliver what they want.
Yeah, it just comes down to being a safe set of hands in many ways. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, everyone who we have that MCs regularly, I know they're going to get into a room and they're going to be able to know that, okay, are you playing the Caboolture RSL, or are you playing some cool little bar that's a speakeasy in the valley, and who's the audience, what is it ticket, is it not, is it a corporate, someone who's going to be able to read the room and behave accordingly and not get up there and be a goose, you know.
And if you want feedback, ask for it before you get up. So if you want a producer to tell you how well you're doing, how do you make that happen? Is that what you're asking?
Do you know the question you're wanting to ask?
Well,
I'm trying to word it in the best way. Like, say for example, if a performer submits something to you, like say for instance, would you prefer it to be a short clip, an audio clip, like a full set?
Whatever it is, it doesn't matter.
Anything.
For me personally, it doesn't matter. As some of the other guys mentioned, I often have people calling me and saying, I'd like a gig and all that sort of stuff. And I go, well, I haven't heard about you. Like, I listen out to MCs talk to me about who's coming through. I talk to people that are running venue. Like, I send messages to people going, who's coming through? Who's looking good? Who, you know, if you're not hearing about someone through the grapevine, like there's people being talked about at the moment, I'm not going to mention any names or anything like that, but people are watching them now.
So it'd be more like a balance between referral as well as submitting the group.
All of the above.
All the above.
And
I
take
think even...
feedback. I've seen this mistake made I've probably made it myself, but if you ask for feedback, listen to it. Even if you don't agree with it. I've seen so many people who've asked, can you watch my show? And then they ask for feedback from the producer or the MC or whatever, and then they give it, and they go, yeah, but, no, but I, yeah, but, and that's counterproductive. It's just listen to it, particularly if it's someone who's, you know, like a producer that you want to book you, fucking smile and nod.
Because as producers, we've only got so much time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like bass, for instance, like Dalton really has his ear to the ground as the like support booker, and if someone's coming through interstate and they want to MC or headline or anything like that, I'll reach out to people that I know. If I'll look through Facebook friend requests and go, hey, is this person all right? Or like, what are they like?
Yeah, I think the voucher's the big one.
The voucher's the absolute biggest thing, because a video.
Videos are dangerous, very, very dangerous.
Yeah,
I can't remember the last time.
Of the puzzle.
Yeah, that's why there are YouTube comments.
Yeah, but I still know what jokes I like. You know what I mean? But I want to know what the person I trust says about them, because that's way more telling. Because I might watch someone's set that they recorded and the audience, they were just crushing it, and I might watch 30 seconds of it and go, I hate this act, I'm busy, and then that's it. Like I may have something else on, but the vouch is always very, very good. Yeah. I'd be curious to know what. You were going to say something. Yeah, I want to. I was going to ask you a question, Phoebe, but if you had something to say, please.
I mean, I think the proof is in the pudding a bit. Like if you are doing well, it's feedback is, I mean, if I say it's good, it's good. It's like you don't need to hook in too much. I think having someone who you trust, who can watch your show, who can give you good kind of directorial or solid feedback, that's more valuable than something that I would give you. I think in my experience, my feedback is that I've given you a gig. I've trusted you enough to put you on stage. But I think it's also, the vouch is really important, so build your network. Make sure you've got good people who will share your love, and also speak well of other artists as well. So if you've got, if someone asks you for advice or for a recommendation, then you're also kind of sharing the love around.
Because I was going to ask, what do you look for, say, when booking the graffiti room for Brisbane Comedy Festival?
I look for variety. So it's all about how the program is shaped in full over the 4 weeks. So I look for, I don't want to say ticking boxes, but it's a bit of ticking boxes. It's make sure I've got something for everybody. But when I'm looking at a new artist, I watch a video. I try and go and see them live, be it in another comedy festival or a room around Brisbane, and I'll ask someone about them. But it's also, for me, it's about that network, being able to bring in an audience. Being booked for a show is one thing, but having people that come to see you is another part of that puzzle.
You had a question?
We do.
Yes.
As producers, how much time and money are you investing in things like online, Zoom, sets, things like that? How do you see that as the future in your business?
Does
it factor in at all?
I don't know. I during lockdown, when Token produced that thing for Stan, I wanted to put needles in my eyes. I thought it was horrible.
No, comedy from
the
home.
best thing about comedy is bringing people together in a live setting and having that moment of no one else in that moment in the world is sharing that transaction between the performer and the audience. And that doesn't translate in a Zoom setting. I personally, I love watching Netflix stand-up specials, but they're shot beautifully. The way it's put together is part of the show. Zoom, I just don't think works. So I wouldn't put any money
I had a
into it.
corporate booker ask me if I do Zoom, and I paused for about 10 seconds. I said, yes, if I need to. And she said, because a lot of the comics are asking to be able to hear the response, and we find that technically difficult. Do you mind just doing it straight down the barrel? And I was like, oh, no, thanks.
They've actually, we did the production for Al Del Bene was opening for Bill Burr, and we had him set up in the basement a few months ago, and so that was filmed with he had a little earpiece in, and the Zoom meeting had all of the people watching had their microphone volume set to a certain amount so that it would come through right, and they had worked quite hard on making that work. But I think you're also asking sort of the worst people you could possibly ask about that, because I produce live events. I want to produce live events. We did a few things over Zoom, say for artists that we managed or opportunities that arose with arts and culture or whatever down in Gold Coast, and we did do those things during lockdown. But the idea of making a pivot to doing Zoom stuff, or I don't want to get into that. That's not my game.
If I can say, just when people try to put a stand-up comedy show, so a stand-up comedy onto Zoom, it doesn't work. What can work, I guess, because stand-up over Zoom is awful, and I will hear nothing other than that. It is awful, truly god-awful.
Bill did do pretty well.
But but look, is there live? Is there interactive things? Is there live podcasts you can do? I don't think that's bad. I know we're going to have to adapt to lockdowns and that kind of thing. So I'm saying it is
frustrating. And we are speaking from a very privileged position up here that we have been able to do live shows.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
For those listening and watching in other states, for whom it has been their only option, some of them have managed to, and Kirsty Wiebeck does an incredible Zoom show.
Yeah.
Some of them have managed to, through blood, sweat and tears, make it happen.
But look at all those
Well, I'd
people
like to
who
retract
have
my
done.
statement.
But look at those people who have done well. They've not gone, oh, I'm going to do a set on Zoom. They've gone, like Yvonne's doing a cooking show, community notice board, like those new and interesting podcasts that people are doing. What Becky and Cam are doing with their podcasts, Lauren and Conchetta as well. Like these are all people who have not just gone, oh, we'll do stuff online.
Yeah.
They've gone, because I think that's the very very first stage of reactionary. We can't do gigs. Let's do it on the internet. When actually what you want to do is deliver content that's curated for your platform and do it well.
And a way
Absolutely.
to use it to develop your audience. Like Ivan's a really good example because he's doing cooking, which is a completely different audience to stand up, but he's bringing the two together. So when they see a show for him in their local town, they'll come along.
If I will just,
Ivan Aristigueta, if anyone's taking notes and doesn't know him. Good luck spelling that, but look it up.
No, the Zoom, like that basic like doing stand up to a camera Zoom thing, I don't think that's super valuable. I think that there are certainly instances, like I said, that Bill Burr show, they had 40,000 people, had a relatively high ticket price, all keen to see Bill Burr doing stand up over Zoom live, and it was a good show. It was really genuinely quite funny, but. The valuable things I've seen locally, those things like Mid-Flight Brawl did a Zoom show with Cody and Haggy a week ago, and it was all over Instagram. All I could see people were tagging them, all the whole thing. They had it all set up so it looked like they had an intro sequence where it was like the back screen or the screen on the back of a seat of an airplane. It was a whole experience. It wasn't just like oh hey guys, I'm on Zoom. Isn't it weird being in a lockdown? Yeah.
can I just
You
say...
got to make it a show.
Yeah. And where we found it useful is that when a lockdown gets hit, the snap lockdown happens and we're in the house for 3 days, is it 8 days or whatever, then we pivot to we do a stupid game show that evening. And it's free, and all it is just to keep people engaged. Keeps us busy, we've got something so we're not going mental. It's a little bit of fun. So we do that most nights of the lockdown, and all you're doing is staying relevant in people's minds, because they're tuning in every single night, and all of a sudden lockdown's lifted, sweet, and we just go back to the... It keeps you, at least it's like I think of it as a placeholder for content sometimes. If you can't leave the house, it is valuable, but we're going to be, fingers crossed, we're not going to be seeing lockdowns in 2022.
Yeah, Guy Montgomery did a spelling bee,
That's
and
your
it was
fingers
massive
crossed.
online.
Ouch.
There you go.
Felix.
So say you have a clusterfuck in your life and the aftermath of that is that people become reluctant to book you. What's the best way to go around redeeming yourself in the eyes of bookers so they'll start booking you again?
So what was the first part of that?
If you have a clusterfuck, if you get cancelled,
Oh.
how do you uncancel yourself? I think is essentially the question.
More around, you might have some bad gigs or you become unreliable, whatever, because of shit happening in your life. People...
How do you find your way back to...
Yeah.
You got to prove yourself. That's the bottom line. That's it.
It is tricky though, because that impression that you leave on, and it's not just comedy, it's every walk of life, that impression that you leave on people is the thing that they're going to default back to forever. But yeah, if you can prove yourself and you can be reliable, and it's if that's a place that you're in where you've done something and really shit the bed, like you might be back at doing 5-minute open mics until someone sees you and goes, oh yeah, they're actually doing really well now. And yeah, there have been plenty of acts who I've seen before when they started out, and I thought, man, this sucks. And 6 months later, they're doing great, or people are telling me good things. You give them another shot, and you're like, oh, wow, they really have improved.
I think humility is I'm thinking of one comic in particular who had to rebuild from...
Name them.
No. A person who pretty much just set everything around them on fire. It was for ages.
Literally.
Well. And to claw their way back, they just started at the bottom and were humble. They didn't expect anything from anyone. They worked really hard. They turned up. They showed the behaviour that they had failed to show before, and they were thankful as they worked their way up. And now they are among the most consistent and reliable comics I've ever seen. So they just had to eat shit for a while and work their way back. But I think and I've seen it not work when people have expected something the second they write themselves. You know, I said sorry, so where's my gigs?
Yeah.
It's gonna, like a relationship. If you cheat, you better do the dishes for fucking ever.
You're right. It's a life problem more than a professional problem, really.
But it
yeah,
can be done.
I think, as I said before, growth. You know, if you can see growth and you want to encourage that, I mean, if someone's a pisshead and they've decided to sober up and take it seriously, you know, blah, blah, you got to kind of encourage that. If someone had some crook views and then now they've gone and changed that, well, that's good and you kind of want to encourage it. But if I was going to be a person that had been cancelled, and I'm sure it's not too far off, but it's, you know, if I was, you know, if I'd done something, you know, whatever, reprehensible, and then I want to try to get back into, you know, the comedy and talk to producers, I'd probably be upfront about it. Say, hey, I know you might have heard, you know, blah, blah, blah. I'd probably just address it, to be honest.
I've had those chats with people.
Yeah,
Me too.
it's uncomfortable, but it's better to just be like upfront because, you know, the rumour mill exists and we all know, and there's all hearsay and that kind of thing. So it's, if you think that's affecting you and you'd want to talk to a producer, I'd just say, hey, blah, 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 can we have a call? This is what happened going through. I'd like to, you know, make amends or whatever.
The rumour mill is a big thing too, and that's something that I've felt it's been a tricky line to walk for Base and for GC Laughs as a festival as well, where I've had sort of questions posed to me going like, oh, do you think so-and-so should be doing such and such because of this thing that is sort of ethereal and mysterious? And it's like, I've personally have tried to not like change bookings based on that. Like, I don't feel like I'm in a position or I should have the right to be the judge and executioner of something like that. That's a difficult one.
It's a tricky one. Phoebe, for someone who's not in the week to week, how does that work for someone trying to get to the powerhouse or the festival?
I think it's just about rebuilding consistency. I think your history as an artist, like every bad experience you have, you grow from and learn from. Like Jake said, it adds to your the kind of the feather in your hat of your story. I think it makes you more interesting. So you use it and grow from it and learn from it.
I mean, Wayne House won the Piece of Wood Award for his show about going to jail. That's a good metaphor.
He was really good at setting stuff on fire.
Oh, yeah.
Really, really good. Anyone else? Any other questions? We had one from Cassandra who contacted us online. And she said a nice thing. Thanks, Cassandra. Why do you think comedy is so big in Queensland? Oh, Queensland producers for whom it is a good thing that it is. Why do you think we are compared to particularly at the moment, sadly, but why is there so much comedy in Queensland, do you think? Why are we doing well?
I think Queensland, well, I lived down south for a long time. I've been here for 4 years. I think Queenslanders are just a lot more relaxed and are better at telling stories and picking the funny things out of those stories, really. And Queensland audiences are also easier to kind of get on board generally. So I think it's just the vibe up here.
The vibe of the thing.
Well, yeah, like I think, Queenslanders are easier to get on with.
We are.
I know for myself, I've been really, like, especially in the last 2 years, working on the concept of building community, reaching out to people, doing things like this, because I want, what I've seen in other states is that venues don't communicate with each other, they don't work together. And what I've seen is with the work that I've done with Josh for a number of years, we've been working on things. There are times where I might be approached about a room and I can't do it, and I'll handball it to Josh and go, hey, I can't do this one, do you want to do this? You know, and it's working together and create, like, in the end, we're all trying to do the same thing. We want people to be working, we want our industry to grow. We don't have a bit, like, the entertainment industry doesn't have the same sort of voice as mining, even though we're the same size. Because we are a series of small boutique businesses. We're not 5 conglomerates.
Yeah, comedy doesn't even have the same voice as arts. unfortunately.
No,
it's
at all.
It's considered a low art, which
Well,
is difficult to get funding
often,
for.
often it doesn't even, often
I
it
don't think
doesn't
it's
even
true at all.
make it onto the grant as a category.
I've written entire grant applications where I've replaced the word comedian with artist just like to get them approved, and it works. It works. As soon as you say comedy, they're like, "Oh, what? No, that's that thing from TV. We don't want to be involved in that."
All right, I'm conscious that it is time to let these people go back to their very busy lives. So do we have one more last question? Everyone is fine. Is there any last thoughts, any words from the wise to our budding producers and comedians out there?
Stage, spotlight, microphone. Speakers.
And don't undervalue
Yeah.
what you're doing.
And also, please, do new material, because I have to watch you week after week after week do a new joke. Yeah.
I'd say just keep at it and learn from your mistakes, really.
Well, can you please join me in thanking these very generous producers, Jake, Josh, Phoebe and Fedele. Give them your love. Off you get. And thank you for coming today. Thanks for the great questions. Thanks to everyone who is watching and listening all over the country, and may you be released back into the wild very soon. I hope you can be in a room like this very soon. So can we get a round of applause for everyone who's watching and listening in the rest of the country who can't gather. We will see you soon. I'm Kat. Gotcha.